Hello, let's talk about the recently updated Waldorf Blofeld Editor. I've got the Blofeld keyboard right here. I have a desktop unit as well, but it's on a borrow right now, so we're going to use the keyboard version on this use case. I'm using Live, and I'm going to set up the editor, then add the audio tracks needed to get the audio coming through, and also MIDI tracks to get sequencing going spot on, perfect timing. There's a couple of caveats with the Blofeld, one being the memory management of buffer memory, and then also, since it has only two outputs, all the multi-temporal parts will be sent to the main outputs, because there is no individual outputs to kind of split your sounds into different outputs, if you like. Also, there is issue with the multi-mode functions, so all of the multi-parameters from the editor goes into the Blofeld, but whatever you do in a Blofeld itself, the multi-parameters won't be updated into the editor. So I would strongly advise not to use any of the multi-mode parameters, simply because it's inconvenient, it's not working properly, and it's lacking the system exclusive integration. Sadly, it would have been amazing if all of the multi-parameters were to be edited as well, but we get what we get, right? So let's get the editor going in Live. So I'm just gonna pick it up right here and insert it on a new track, and here is the new updated look. Obviously the user interface is too big, so we're gonna make it a bit smaller so we can see what we're doing. Right, okay, so I know my Blofeld settings. I would strongly recommend to set the device ID to 0 on your unit, but since I have a desktop and I have the keyboard, desktop is using device ID 0 and the keyboard is using device ID 1, so all of the data is transferred into a proper unit, and we can actually see all of the necessary parameters from this interface, but you can do the MIDI diving from in your Blofeld before setting the MIDI interface in the editor. So on a keyboard, I have my local control off, auto edit is on, it should be. Also, Control RX and Control TX settings are important, so make sure those are enabled, and Control plus system exclusive to get all of the knob parameters into the UI. And here is the multi-mode mixer, what I was just talking about. So try to adjust the program level from the oscillators page and amp volume. I would do it from here instead of trying to play around with the multi-mode mixer, because it's not transferring the data into the hardware, and if you do any multi-mode edits on the hardware itself, they won't be transferred into the software, so there's a bottleneck on a data stream. Right, so like I said, I'm gonna choose my device ID. I have my global channel set to 16, and since we are using the black keyboard, I'm just going to use the black UI looks as well. Makes it easier to recognize the unit when you have multiple instances going, well, two in my case, one for desktop and one for keyboard. So then we can choose the MIDI ports, and data should be coming in. As we can see, getting parts and done. Boom. Okay, Blofeld is now synchronized with the editor, or vice versa. And let's take a look at some of the pages from the newly updated editor. So the librarian view is pretty much the same as it was before. In a librarian, you can obviously do shift and click, select multiple items and copy those and paste. What else is new? Show quick edit. So every time you choose a different part, you have quick controls visible on the librarian page, so you don't have to flip through different tabs to adjust the sound while you're browsing a different patch. We have a new function to import Pulse and Pulse Plus. I have a Pulse Plus in the rack up there. It's not visible. And then Pulse 2, which is actually right here, but it's not powered up. So we can import those banks into the librarian. And if you do import MIDI or system exclusive files, you can also import Q and micro Q. I have a micro Q on a rack right about somewhere there. So you can import those, and the editor recognizes those files, and you can then play around with the classic sounds. Obviously the sound is not exactly one-to-one because the engine is different and the filters are different, but oscillators and all of the parameters are there, so you'll find your sweet spot. Alright, so I'm just gonna keep this quick edit function on so we can see what happens. And I was talking about the memory management, so what I mean is there is no individual buffer for each part. So every time you load a new sound into a active part, it will put it in bank and program combination buffer slot. So let's say part 1 and part 2 shares the same memory location, then obviously both parts are going to play the same sound, and if you do the edits on a part 2, it will also affect part 1 because they are sharing the same buffer location. Hope that makes sense. So we added a feature in this editor version that gives you a heads up if there is a conflict or a conflicting combination on any of those 16 parts. And let's see, I'm just going to show you how it works. So let's load up A and B1 to part 1. So it's on it's loaded up on the hardware, and then let's change part and try to do the same, and this is what you get. So it found a combination that clashes, so both parts are sharing the same memory location now. But before we dump the data from part 2 into that memory location, we have an option to choose yes to allow the editor to find a free slot from a different bank. So if part 1 uses bank A, part 2 could use bank B and program 1, so then they are not clashing with each other. That's kind of neat. Then you can choose no, and it will overwrite the buffer from whatever the conflicting part is. So if I choose no, it will write the buffer for part 1 as well. And cancel if you want to change the bank and program, well, mainly the bank location manually from here. So let's do yes, and now the hardware has assigned the bank, the editor has assigned the bank to B, so they are not clashing with each other. So you can do different edits on both of the parts. Same sound, different edit, and it will be memorized when you open up your project. Right, so let's see. Here is the oscillators page. There is now option to click on each of the items to kind of play around, choose different oscillator modes with a lot easier method than before. And then there is the wavetable, and we added option to upload custom user wavetables. I strongly recommend to find more information about the wavetable editors from the internet, because we don't have the wavetable editor functions built into our editor. So you have to find a different program or different method to create those wavetable files, and then you can upload those into the Blofeld. Also, sample oscillator mode is supported, so you can upload your own samples into Blofeld. Let's say you want to do a super saw massive pad lead sound, then you want to upload that into your Blofeld to do different kind of tweaks with the Blofeld. So you can do that, and then if you click rename, it will pop up the text file from your Blofeld Editor folder, where you can rename the items that you have uploaded. Obviously you have to use a Spectre, Waldorf own editor, to upload samples, because that's far better way than we trying to rewrite the same application for our editor, which doesn't make any sense. Right, so this is the oscillators page. There is new section menus, so you can save your section presets and then recall those later on. Obviously I've got something that I've tried. And then there is this dice button, which is section randomize, so you can randomize one section very quickly. Then there is filters, and with the filters we have an option to link the filters, and in the utilities menu there is a option in editor preferences, filter link offset values. That's obviously hidden from the view because my screen is quite big, so it's there. You can also find other useful functions from the utilities menu. Right, moving on, we have the same section menus and then randomize. Same applies to LFO, mod matrix, and then the effects. So in Blofeld, FX2 is global, so, and in this case we are using part 1 as a global FX master. So whatever you have loaded on a part 1 will have a global effect on every part. Then on instrument slots 1, 2, 3 and 4 you can assign an insert per patch, but if you go to part 5, then the insert is not available because, well, it's not available. Only parts 1, 2, 3 and 4 has that. Then there is a arpeggiator editor, as it was before, and yeah, I think that covers up the updated UI looks for the editor. So let's try to add some sounds and get some sounds out from it. So let's add audio track and see where the Blofeld is. Assign the MIDI keyboard. MIDI is coming in and audio is right there. Enable monitoring, and we have bass. Classic, very classic sound. Alright, so let's try a different preset for part 2. Obviously all of the MIDI, even though I've chosen part 2, all of the MIDI is coming and it's being assigned to part 1. So when you click show keyboard, you get this text that all MIDI CC data falls to active part. What means that if you change part, all of the MIDI notes coming from your DAW is going to the active part, and that only works when the DAW is not in a playback mode, because otherwise that would cause a mayhem. So each part can be played like that. Right, so let's try something else for part 3. And it's really that simple, and you can see how the quick edit also shows the values for the most important parameters as you go. And here is a imported bank, which I'm pretty sure that most of you know, and this is from the MicroQ, and you can import MicroQ banks into the editor. Right, so now we have audio coming in, and let's do MIDI to get sample accurate sequencing going. So I'm gonna add MIDI tracks and assign those to the Blofeld. Let's see where they are. Configure, and we need to enable Blofeld from here. This is obviously not going to work with the Windows version because Windows cannot share multiple devices as of now. There is a multicast MIDI driver coming, but it's not here yet. So this is now gonna go to Blofeld and part 1, and if we play that, we get that same bass. How do we duplicate this? Probably on a different view. No. Obviously I'm not expert on live, so this is what you get. Okay, so we now have two different parts, and we can do those individually, and we can use one editor to control all of the parameters per part. And let's do 2 more, 3, and let's do the 4th one right there, and let's load a patch into part 4 and enable MIDI for that. See how that sounds. Yeah, very cool. Obviously my ADDA converter is losing its mind. It's cracking the audio, but you get the idea. So do instrument track where you put the editor and then add audio track into your session, enable the input from your Blofeld, and then do individual MIDI tracks for sequencing. So you can then do all of the sequences for each of the MIDI tracks, and these are not assigned to the editor, they are going straight out into the Blofeld. So the DAW handles all of the delay compensation and gets the MIDI going on tight timing. Right, so one more thing, let's talk about automation. So obviously we can automate pretty much every parameter from the Blofeld, or we can assign we can assign a MIDI CC for each of the controls. So what we need to do in order to get the automation going, we need to click this button, unfold device parameters, and then click configure. And now if we have a part 1 and we want to adjust the cutoff, we just move the cutoff and it's assigned there. You see the number 1 in the brackets, so that's indicating which part it is. And if we move to part 2 and move that cutoff, it's got the part 2 indicator, and the same applies onwards as you go. Right, okay, cool. So now you can do all of the automation in live however you do it. I'm not sure. There we go. And we have all of the cutoffs here, and if we do tweak the knobs, we can see it moving on a DAW as well. Right, so there is the updated Blofeld Editor, and it's looking pretty good. We are very happy with it, and it's a lot faster in use than the old one, and obviously it is very cool to have the ability to zoom in and do all of the edits as you prefer. Right, so yeah, I think that's pretty much all that there is to it. So if you have any questions, hop over to our Discord server. You can find the link in the video description. Also, we have a Ko-fi page where you can donate a cup of coffee. That's always welcomed, and you can find more details about the Blofeld editor and the demo from our website. And we are pushing the new update. This is recently updated, so we are pushing this out very soon for a public. And yeah, I think that's all to it. I hope you enjoy the Blofeld editor and what it can do for your sound editing and making music, the process of making music. All right, I'm gonna leave you to it, and take care. See you next time. Bye.